Hey gang, so time for another review. This one I got a little while back and I wanted to wait. I wanted to give it a bit of time. I wanted to play with it. I wanted to figure out everything it can do because at first it looks simple, but there are so many ways to use this, the Musketeer. And honestly, it's one of the first toys that's actually reminded me of the things I played with as a kid. It's like you're a super soldier, spy, James Bond, Robotech, kind of cool. Like, man, I don't even know, but this thing is actually way more fun than I thought it would be. So let's have a look. So let's start with the Musketeer first. This thing is actually pretty cool on its own. It's a little short. So when you're kind of doing this movement here, the side to side and up and down, it's a little tough because you don't have anything to grip onto down here. So it gets a little hard to manipulate the button with your thumb. Now what I've started doing though is I push the top down. And that just makes it a little easier, I find. I kind of hook my finger, my index finger on the lip here, and then I push up. So at least then I have a grip. The side to side's still a little tricky with nothing to hold on to because it's hard to get that grip. But the up and down, if you kind of get, you get your fingers on the edges here, you can get a decent purchase like that. And then it's just up and down or push on the top and the side to side. The other option is you can actually flip it, keep it out, and just sort of turn the top like this. So basically it's the same movement. You're just turning the top part instead of the actual, we'll call it the barrel. This on its own kind of reminds me of like less of a lighter, actually. I've heard it referred to as a lighter a lot, but I feel like this is almost like a heavy duty military lipstick case, right? And hey, that's cool. You can have a lipstick case on you. So the other, so there's two things this does. One, it's this little fidget. It's a clicker, sort of like a slide. I don't even know what you would kind of classify this as. But the other thing is it sort of sells itself as a screwdriver. Now, this holds sort of a standard bit in here, right? So we've got like a standard screwdriver bit. You can just pop that in. And then depending on what side you turn, obviously you want to sort of set this into the proper direction. And so it's kind of a cool, really expensive screwdriver that you can put bits into. Or if you want to get really fancy with it, you can put in an adapter. And now you've got a little torque screwdriver. Now you can just use this on its own without the ratchet, without any of that stuff. And all you have to do is just hold it or put that back or just keep it collapsed. And if you keep it collapsed, then you never have to worry about what direction it's going to turn in. And so then you've got this tiny little screwdriver. So that's kind of cool. But would you use it as a screwdriver? Probably not. And it is magnetized in the bottom. Oops. There we go. You can see that. So your bits will stay. So, if you want to be that person that's super impressive to all their friends and you whip out this really bizarre looking screwdriver, then go for it if that's your thing. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to modify this. And I'm going to show you how this works. So it comes with these 2 extra springs and 2 extra balls. So a thinner spring with a small ball. Now I'm going to be that nerd that... now I'm going to be one of those guys that pulls out, you know, the digital ruler and stuff, but only to get a proper measurement on this. This is supposed to be 4 millimeters. Okay, so it's always a little tricky with a ball. There we go. Okay, so that's 4. That's a 4 millimeter ball. And the diameter on the spring is going to be just under 4. And then we have a much bigger ball. This is a 5 millimeter ball. Let's see, get that in there. So 5 millimeter ball. And again, a much wider spring, just under 5. It's a little shorter though. So the idea is inside here, there is already a 4 millimeter ball. And it's a metallic or ceramic or something to that effect, but that gives it this kind of clicky Zippo lighter sound. And it has that little ping at the end of it. So now what we'll do is we're going to take out one ball and the spring, and then I'm going to show you how it gets quieter and quieter. So in here is currently the loudest, and then this gets more of a muted sound, and then this goes down to an even quieter sound. That's how the product is listed. So here's what we're going to do. The easiest way to take the ball out, because the ball is right in the opposite direction of this button. So, you know, if the button's here, the ball is here. And you can actually see when you open this up, if you can see that, right inside is a hole. And that hole is where the ball slides into. And there's actually like a little groove in here as well. So you can see that the ball slides along that groove and then locks into the hole. So what we're going to do is move this just down 1. And it's important to move it down just 1 click, or I should say up 1 click. And the reason you want to move it up 1 click is so that you can actually turn it. If it's here and I take the button out, I have no grip to turn it. If it's here and I take the button out, I'm not going to be able to control the ball popping out as well. And you'll see why, because this is a much larger opening. I want to only use this opening here. So I'm going to make sure it's in that position. So again, it's 1 click up. And this is a T8, by the way. So I'll take that out. Now at this point, you're still safe. Nothing is coming flying out. Everything is still secure in behind. But the ball will appear here. So what I'm going to do is put my finger over the hole and then just turn it. And then I can feel the ball pop up. And you probably heard that little click. And then as I take my finger away, you can see there's the metal ball. And inside, there's a little metal spring. Okay, so we'll just take that out. So now we have the original ball and spring that it ships with, and it's hard to see because it's a little darker. So that's what they consider the default configuration. Okay, so we'll put that down. Now we're going to load in the slightly quieter. Now again, spring is in there, ball is in there, so I push down and then I turn. And that's why it's important to have it in this position. Now watch, as soon as it turns, it snaps into place. Now you can even just test this. I'll just test this without putting the button in. Although the button is a stopper, so it prevents it from flying up. But if I'm careful, I'll just keep it like this so we don't have to go through the process of screwing the button back in. But you'll hear the difference now, or at least you should. So that's more of a click now. It's got a more of a plasticky feel to it, or sound to it. Okay. And now we're going to go with the biggest one. So again, I'm going to put my thumb over the hole where the screw and the button would normally be, because that's the ball on the opposite side. I'll just turn it. Now this one also you have to be careful, because this one really wants to come out because we're using a taller spring or a longer spring. You will notice too, the balls get a little dirty after rubbing around in there because it's rubbing against the inside. And you can actually, here, we'll see this a bit more clearly. You can see the grooves that the ball runs across down those 3 points. I mean, you can just take this thing right out if you want. Okay, so now we're going to put in the, call it the wide spring. Okay, and now this is the quietest ball. Now make sure you just want to turn it, or sorry, you want to raise this just enough to get some grip. And then be able to turn it. So now I have the quietest ball. This is almost silent. So this is if you're going to be in the office for the day or something, or you're just going to be around people. Maybe you want to go with the quieter mode. Okay, so we're going to take that out now. Again, put my thumb over, just turn it till I can feel the ball push up against my thumb. Get it. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to get this back in. So let's go back to our default loud click. Turn it in there. It clicks into place. Put the button back on. Now the button has to, there you go. Sometimes it sits on an edge weird, so it doesn't go in flat like right now. There we go. Okay. Now this really is not a hard thing to take apart. It's actually quite simple. And then, now what I did find though, what you want to do is make sure you don't screw this in too hard, because if you put it in too hard, it'll actually create pressure on the other side, I guess against the spring, and then it pushes it up too much. So this is, to me, by far the most satisfying sound. Okay, so next we're going to go with our bead. The bead itself is pretty simple. There are two sides to it, and there is a bearing on the inside. So we're going to take this apart after to put the ratchet accessory on. So I'm going to leave it as is for now. Now there's a flat side and a side that protrudes out a little more, and the protruding side, from the majority of the videos I've watched, all show that the protruding side goes down to connect. Having said that, I have done it the other way. It doesn't seem to really make much of a difference. It just sits up a little more. It rests a little more off of here because this is indented. There's actually like a space for it to sort of sit into like this. So you can see there's a gap, but when I put it this way, there's still enough of a gap that it doesn't touch anything. So I don't know. I think it seems to work either way, and in fact, it might actually be more stable. Oh, actually, you know what? It is. I take that back, because this diameter matches this perfectly. And then it doesn't move around, whereas this actually does move. So I take that back. Take the large flat diameter side and put it here and match it up. And then we take our screw, our post, and we screw it in. And that's it. Now you have a spinner. It's actually a really good spinner. Now, I'm sure you can change the bearings out. For people who know bearings well, I have no doubt that they would look at this bearing and go, yeah, I want to switch that one out. Okay, so now we have our little spinner here. So there's a couple things. I find you can do two things. The other way you can do it is you can hold the spinner, like the mecha, the bead, and just sort of spin the top, which is actually, this is what you would do if you were using this as a screwdriver anyways. Having the bead on there would help because it gives you that, you know, this is more like a torque screwdriver, like when you see everybody using online. So then you can kind of palm it, let it rest in your palm, and just sort of use your fingers to turn. Now, the way I tend to use this, so this already helps because it extends the grip. So it helps when you're doing this little slide movement we were talking about earlier. But what I tend to do is if I'm playing with the spinner, I'll actually extend the barrel just so I have something to hold on to. And that automatically gives you grip for like your baby finger, your little finger. And if you turn it, I find if I turn the button to the inside of my hand, then it gives me sort of a more natural place for my finger, my middle finger, to wrap around. And then my index finger kind of sits in the groove up here. So that's actually pretty comfortable. That I really like. Oh, I should mention too, there's a space in here for I think tritum valves or vials. Jesus. Okay. So, you know, little glow sticks, one on each side. So yeah, finger, grip. This is a pretty cool, like that feels really good. I like that. And then again, palm it. I find I don't switch to the outside much because it's hard to get my thumb back all the way around. So I tend to go up, over, back down, or I still do this. Okay, so we have our spinner. Now we're going to switch to the Ratchet modification. So I unscrew here, take this pin out. Now here's where you have to use some extra tools because you have to take these apart. We have to get inside the bead. I just take the metal ruler, pop it in there, and I hold, and then take this and turn. I should have done that in the first place, but I was trying to be clever with using something small. Clearly, that's not always the best way to go. All right, so we open, I'm going to move this over here. Now to open this up, okay, so all this is there's, you know, nothing to be afraid of here. This is not that big of a deal when you start doing it. This is just a post, like a regular spinner, fidget spinner. Now we have this insert, and this insert is a thread. So all we do is take this thread out, or sorry, take out this threaded insert. Now this is threaded on the outside, smooth on the inside, right? So it's just meant to sit there and let the post spin around. I'm going to move that over. And inside here, this could happen to you, but don't worry about it. If the bearing falls out, okay, because there is a bearing inside, that's what lets everything spin. There's actually a little ledge. Where are we here? There's a little ledge inside here. Come on, Sean, get better. And then the bearing will only fit that way. You can't even put it in the other side. It won't even fit. So there's no way to screw that up. Okay? So that's in here. Your bearing's there. Now, you take the ratchet, and this is unfortunate because this seems to be plastic. So this is kind of cheap, but I guess the accessory set itself is pretty cheap. So, you know, what do you expect? So you've got threads here. You've got this threaded plastic piece, and we just turn it on or turn it around, thread it inside. Make sure it's tight. So we have are little notches here, okay? These are notched. It's a little tiny little dimples. So again, when we put this on, this can only go in one way. Okay, so if we try to put it in the other way, see how that moves around, doesn't sit well? So the bigger side and the side without the post goes in the non-ratchety hole because the post fits all the way inside like that. So it actually rests inside. So then we have it, we just tighten it. Now I'm going to do my super awkward ruler pose again. Make sure it's tight, and it's tight. So now it's opposite, and that's what threw me off before. So now the protruding side is the side that goes on to the Musketeer. So if you're doing the spinner side, it's the flat. If you're doing the ratchet side, it's this protruding edge. Now why? And what happens with these little dimples? Well, that is what these little pins are for. So each of these pins, let's see if we can focus on that, has a little ball at the end of it. And that little ball pushes in. Okay? So you'll see it when you get it. One side's flat, one side has a ball. So put the flat side in one hole. Take the other flat side, put it in the other hole. Okay, so now you've got these two little balls like sticking out. Let's see if I can do this without them falling. Yeah, okay. So now we've just got the two little balls that are sticking out. And so those balls basically bounce through these grooves. And then we take, for whatever reason, there's this other post. Either post works, but let's just work with what they've given us for now. Now, what is nice about this extra post is you don't even need the T8 tip. You could just take anything and put it into the lanyard post. And then you have this ratchety spinner. And again, I usually kind of keep this out. Now, what's kind of cool with the ratchet is that it really gives you a good feel when you do this. So again, if you're holding on to the bottom with your pinky, you can really get some nice clicks on that. Okay, so that's what I like about the spinner. About the Musketeer. What I have noticed on a couple of occasions are some faults with it, and I'm not sure why it happens, but I think it's because the insert for one is plastic. When you're using the ratchet, what can happen, now it's not happening in the moment, but after I've played with this enough, basically the little spacer in here, the little threaded insert starts to unthread. So kind of like when the Loudy mechanic ring, where you could turn it one way, but if you turn it the other way, it starts to unscrew. Well, that's what tends to happen with this. So this is more of a single directional toy, or, you know, you want to turn it one way, because when you start turning it the other way, eventually it'll catch and it'll actually unthread a little bit. It doesn't come off. It only turns a little bit, and it can't come off because the screw holds it in place. But it does sort of ruin the movement. So the way to fix that is if you want to use some Loctite. But then, of course, you're sort of dedicating yourself to only using one of the functionalities, either ratchet or spinner, because it's going to be a little harder for you to take it off. Although blue Loctite is actually, it's not that strong. The other thing I've noticed is after a lot of play, this screw can come loose. Not sure why, but it just eventually starts. You'll notice this little scratch in your finger when you're playing with it, and it's like, what the hell is that? And then you realize it's the screw. Now, again, when these things happen in these products, it's not across the board. It's not like all the products have all the same problems, but I have noticed on this one. So all I have to do is I just usually make sure it's tight, tight enough. Not so tight that it adds odd pressure to the other side, but you want it set good. Lanyard hole. I have no idea. I mean, it would be cool to have the lanyard on there when you're holding it this way. The problem is if you hold it like this and you start spinning, the lanyard is gonna like drop and kind of get in the way as you spin. So I'm not sure. I haven't tried the lanyard yet, but I'm curious. I'm curious to sort of know. Oh, and this is the other thing. When you spin it, right? If you spin the musket itself, the lanyard loop starts spinning because the screw is attached. So if you're going to use it this way, which I find I do more than the other way. I do this all the time, more than this. And so that might give you problems with the lanyard. Other than that, I absolutely love this. Also to mention, the Mecha bead is titanium. Somebody mentioned it might be a titanium alloy. I'm not sure. But at first I thought it was plastic because it's so light. But the bead itself is not plastic. However, the ratchet accessory is. So just keep that in mind. But I'm going to zoom in on this for a second. I love this thing. I play with it all the time, and it absolutely makes you kind of feel like a kid. This is something that, 12-year-old me, even 13-year-old me, hell, 14, 15-year-old me would have loved to have picked up in the 80s. I mean, this thing reminds me so much of the toys we had where it was like toy guns and stuff where you'd ratchet. I am not a gun guy, but I loved to play with them as a kid. I always, pretended I had one, and this absolutely has that sense. It's even got like that sort of machine gun barrel feel to it. And there's also this cool kind of like spy techie kind of look to it. I mean, this thing is unique. It's fun to play with, really fun to play with. You just have to figure the quirks out. But once you get comfortable with it, it's not a problem at all. You can configure this on and off all day. And it's so simple and quick to do after you know what you're doing. So not a scary thing to change up. If you're concerned about getting one and that it's not going to be very much fun, I would absolutely get it. It's a lot of fun. So there you go. Hope you pick one up. And if you do, let me know what you think. And maybe we can even share some new ways to use it. All right, that's it. I'll just extend it out. Yoink. Okay, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope this helped.